to digital economy. It is so, but we underestimate the role which is given to business within this program. This is probably one of the most interesting instruments which have been given to business in terms of legislation making. And this participation is stipulated in the documents. We have agreed the plan, and approved by the Prime Minister last year. We have 10 articles or chapters there, and it touches upon anti-monopoly, intellectual property, distributed register. So all that we talked about today is mentioned there. There is the second big part. This is the concept of middle term regulation, where we have to form how the regulation will change in 2-3 years and the continuation of this plan. And the third very interesting part is the concept of managing the changes. This is the legislation making in the future. This is establishing of a systematic platform where norm-making process by using IT technologies will enable us to meet the requirements and challenges we have. Igor Drozdov mentioned that this year we have a plan to develop about 50 legislative acts. They will be developed in certain terms, and all our initiatives are mentioned there. We just have to understand what moment all the parties concerned will see themselves and should get involved into this work. And the unique character of this work is that this program, Digital Economy, appeared in the summer last year. And in the fall last year, it was the system of management was approved. And this management system, besides state authorities, there are 3 new institutions. This is the Center for Competence, working groups, and the Digital Economy, which coordinates their activities. The unique character of these 3 institutions are driven by business. The working groups consist by more than 50% of businesses. The other part are representatives of regional authorities, parliament, and academic circles. So the Competence Center is in this program, and if you speak about normative regulation, it's the Skolkovo Fund. We should understand that this is not just a foundation who expresses its own opinion, competent opinion. This is the ground where opinion of business is gathered. And this business opinion, or opinion of the business, is structured in the Center of Competence according to certain thematic groups. We have 10 chapters, as I said, and each chapter has one thematic group which on the basis of Center of Competence works. And the format of working of this working group is absolutely open. There are no restrictions. Everyone who wants to get involved into this work can do this. Half a minute, please. And the most important thing then, we have to understand that this plan appeared not by itself, not within the state. It was created by the business. The whole system of management is made that initiatives in changing legislation are from business. The plan is formed in the Center of Competence, then it gets to the working group, which consists of the representatives of business, then it's improved, and only then it gets to the government and is approved by Dmitry Medvedev. And legislative acts are going through the same way, They are developed in the Center of Competence by the thematic groups, which I mentioned. After that, they get to the working group, are approved there, and then the authorities have a possibility or an opportunity to make remarks, but their opinion is not blocking ones. All the initiatives from business get to the government, and then according to the plan, get to the State Duma and should be adopted. As I said, we have 50 legislative acts to be developed, and most of them will be adopted in the coming 2 or 3 months. If business have some opinion that some things should be given priority, and all these initiatives concerning intellectual property will be discussed within the coming 3 months. And so please, if someone wants to get involved into this work, please do that. Thank you very much. Thank you. This is a very good point. It deserves attention, and it indicates how effectively European Union does that. There are about 13,000 bureaucrats, and many things are initiated by business circles, and bureaucrats have to listen to them. It is reflected in Amsterdam and Lisbon Agreement. Thank you.
So let's pass over to another issue. So changes in the anti-monopoly legislation. And so there are issues within this topic pertaining to the role of the states. And I remember that in 2016 there were initiatives to introduce changes in a number of articles of this anti-monopoly legislation, but it was not supported. Now we are preparing package 4 of our anti-monopoly legislation. And I remember our reforms of the civil code. And do you think that the new initiatives will stir the same heated discussions as during the discussion of the civil code? Thank you very much. So IP rights have always been discussed separately. And we are not going, either in the long-term perspective or short-term perspective, we're not going to discuss them in the framework of an anti-monopoly legislation. And no special competences are needed. This is a part of Russian legislation. I don't see any limitations or any barriers for introducing minor changes to our anti-monopoly legislation within the legal framework of Russia's legislation. When we speak about creating cartels or cartel agreements, then we're following world trends. We're not inventing the wheel. So what do we want to receive after the reforms, after the changes are introduced? We would like to get a well-functioning system of anti-monopoly legislation. And just to give you an example, I will give you a case that I was responsible for checking, and one of the construction companies contacted us, and the company was banned from participating in a tender, in a state tender, when a municipality put on a tender the construction of a multi-apartment block of flats. So it's just a regular construction project, but the problem was that the concrete blocks used in the construction of apartment blocks of this type were patented by one right holder. And only this right holder, the producer, the person, the company that patented these blocks can sell these cement blocks. And this rights owner can sell these blocks to whoever he wants to. And that's why the construction company complained to us, and they could not participate in our tender. So it was actually up to the IP right owner whom to sell the blocks. So was it a fair decision or not? Do we deprive IP right holder of his rights to decide on whom to sell or not? So is it a fair decision? So if I refer to Article 10, so how justified is this ban from participating in a public tender? I am not going to answer this question now. It's a rhetoric question. Doesn't require any answer. This is just to give you food for thought. So I think that the coming changes in the anti-monopoly legislation will allow us to get rid of such cases, such practices as the one that I commented on now. Then there's another initiative on licensing for pharmaceutical companies. So it is stipulated in the European law, it is stipulated in the legislation of the WTO, and many companies follow it, including Middle East countries and European countries and United States. So there's nothing new in it, in the introduction of this licensing procedure for the pharmaceutical sector. Now we are we are working on the wording of the legal norms that will allow us to apply this new legislation to practice. And I do hope that in the near future we'll be able to use these powerful legal tools, which is applied throughout the world in different countries, and it is one of the instruments of exerting pressure on IP rights holders. And it is part of the patent legislation and part of the IP rights legislation as well. 30 seconds left. So these are the main things, the main topics that we are working on at the moment. And Package 5 of the anti-monopoly legislation is a consequence of our reaction to all the changes that our economy has been going on, including its digitalization. And we are going to lower the dominance threshold from 35% lower. And that means that we have to accumulate data, and intellectual rights owners will be able to choose the database that the company finds more suitable. And thank you.
So I would like that the representative of Warner, just the Vice Director for Warner Music Russia, Olga Kim, joined our discussion. Probably this discussion of monopolies and anti-monopoly does not have very much in common with the current situation. Probably we can take a break from the new initiative. So what do you think of that? Well, good afternoon. It's very pleasant to hear the declaration of the intentions that the copyright and related rights are not the aim of or not the target of the draft of new legal legislation. But I would like to share my concern when we hear that the new legislation or draft has been formulated as being applicable to copyright and related rights, because you have no comments on. You haven't shared the comments with the right owners that this legislation will not be used in the kind of fight for the rights between the owners, the right holders. I understand the intentions and I understand the motives which stand in the background of all the intentions of anti-monopoly service, but as we can see it now, I think it has some discrepancies between the declaration and the situation de facto which we can find ourselves in, because if we exclude or if because the solutions of anti-monopoly service does not differentiate between the rights of the object, and we see the real danger in the fact which you mentioned in the previous plenary session. So you mentioned that unlike the Western experience, the issues of anti-monopoly regulation and the cases of using the dominant right are classified as administrative right violation in Russia, but not as a criminal, not under the criminal code. Yes, certainly, this point is the point of our concern, because the administrative legislation in Russia has got many limits on just on the solutions that it takes, on the competition between the sides in the court, and just we have got the limited number of instruments which we can use in such discussions, and just sometimes we cannot provide the full protection and the best way of legislation according to the norms which exist today. And if we use them in our field, I'm sure that it will facilitate unfair competition, because these norms can become the major argument in our in our competition or in our discussions with the whole right holder, because just if we think about the when we deal with some company, of course, our competitors use your norms as background, and very often you have to accept their arguments, because so they use kind of legal documents and legal norms, and we will have to justify for our our position. So we would we can come up with the suggestion of that we should be included, our industry should be included into the councils in some public discussions on the issues, and the intention to implement, the intention that you have voiced right now, that copyright and related rights cannot be included. So, yeah, cannot be included into this initiative. So we would like to participate in such, or just we would like to share the same intention that your aim, your intention will be, supported by some legal steps. So we have got one of our guests is Vladimir Presnikov, and I heard their latest release, and that was really very interesting. And it's just a kind of very short commercial, or probably I would ask you to comment on just how this latest work has been released, and just how it can be how you can apply the latest norms, the latest regulation for releasing such songs. Well, unfortunately, the civil right or the civil code limits the collective use, limits the societies for collective use, and that is why the right owner cannot. So we are ready to consider everything that you suggest. So there are no conceptual differences, disagreements between us. Let's come down to the issues which relate to the second point on our agenda, second item on our agenda, anti-piracy regulations and issues of global governance. And we have got several representatives of anti-piracy strategy. Sergei Selyanov, our well-known producer, the chairperson of the Association of Producers, Film and Musical Producers. So I would like him to share his ideas, how he evaluates the cooperation between different players in terms of, in terms of property right protection.
I didn't actually understand the question. We are very much concerned about this. Boris, do you include our colleagues into the working group, or you just ask them to... you know, we don't have a working group, actually. So, is this kind of contradiction? I should say that the creative industry has quite a negative attitude towards your initiative. Let's proceed from the fact that we do not have any contradiction. If you need to make some amendments, let's do this. Thank you. Andrey Borisovich, creative industry is very much eager to have a working group, but we should not limit ourselves to our business to fighting for their rights. Okay, let's give certain form to this discussion. Sergei, please. Well, anti-piracy direction can be example of fruitful, successful, not easygoing, but still a correct case of cooperation between the state and the industry, on all the industries which have certain relation to the distribution. There have been 3 versions of the law with the support of Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Communication. It is all going on in a good mood, so let's say so, we understand what is going on, we understand what they are going to do, and I should say that in difference with the situation, say, 5 years ago, when we have a very big gap because between the representatives of the Ministry of Communication, IT industries, and our position of content owners, copyright holders. So now the situation is very different, and we are very grateful to our colleagues, to our partners for this struggle, I would say so. So I will not touch upon philosophical issues. On today's agenda, besides on the agenda today is fighting with piracy resources, which is going on, which has its results. I should say that it might seem paradoxical. The number of piracy of unauthorized accounts increased. This is actually the reaction of from the pirates to these 2 instruments of fighting them, which I have already mentioned. Unauthorized websites or pirates have a very big advantage comparing to our state-to-business partnership. They have a private property which is stolen. In all creative industries, they are driven by creative initiatives. And our first presenter today said that the government makes laws after the wishes of business. If it is so, that's very fine, but I think it's a dream, and our business is very much interested in that. That's why it would be very fine. So, as far as I'm limited of time, I will not violate this rule. I will not break this regime. I should say that we need some support from the state, some assistance in our work with social networks, with searching sites such as Yandex, with working with social networking sites. We have a very good working regime and cooperation with VKontakte website or social network. We are undergoing the first stage of our cooperation. It's very much active with this social network website. We are doing some testing work as for ID content, etc. So it doesn't matter how we call these. So the VKontakte is very much interested in that. And the second stage is optimization. I believe that VKontakte will compete with YouTube, at least in the Russian market. As for searching websites, first of all, Yandex, I believe that the situation here is disgusting. Yandex is the major assistant of pirates. Actually, my colleagues will speak about this in detail. Sergei Semyonov will do this. So, the point is the point that give us the law and we will follow it. They are were hypocritical. I can give you an example. On the one hand, they say that the machine does everything by itself, and they do not have any kind of right, neither ideological or whatever, to not to fulfill the wish or to make the customer wish come true. At the same time, they publicly say that it will be in the first line in the search. So this is not very good. So that we want to pass this law, and so you have half a minute now. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that anti-piracy legislation is a story which we can be proud of, even in the context of international cooperation, because a lot of what has been done in the last 5 years, these 3 anti-piracy laws, they were passed in the context of inter-industrial, communication, and then it all started working on different grounds in inter-industrial dialogue. And I should say that due to other legislation, we may say about our advanced international experience, but what Sergei mentioned, the problem or issues which he mentioned about searching systems, payment systems, what Alexander also mentioned in his presentation during the plenary session, that we should decrease the blocking periods. We should pass some new laws on mirror websites. I have now a question to Sergei Semyonov, who is a guru in the topic which we are talking today on. Does the practice show that we now should have preconditions for the 4th anti-piracy law? Probably you will. This is the high time for this.
I'm sorry, so I would like to spend a couple of minutes speaking about anti-piracy law number 4. number 3. So this is the law regulating the activity of casinos. And pirates, actually, they make use of this resource. And that law that I mentioned focused on this particular problem. Colleagues, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you for your kind words. I understand perfectly well the difficulty of covering such a complex topic in such a short period of time, but nevertheless I would like to thank the organizers of the forum, not because they invited me or Sergei, a colleague of mine, or other representatives of creative industries, but I would like to thank them for their efforts to discuss a wide range of topics during this important event. On the one hand, it makes our discussions more complex, more intense, and on the other hand, it gives us a good perspective, us specialists. That's why we would like to thank the organizers for including technological turbulence topic, for putting it on the agenda. When I read the agenda, I was very much interested in learning more what is meant by technological turbulence. So this is my personal interest. But since the moderator of our discussion asked me a direct question, so I will focus now on the fourth package or fifth package of anti-monopoly legislation. So you understand that developing such a legislation is a constant struggle, a clash of interests between copyright owners, IP right holders, and all other stakeholders. So just to give you an example, 3 years ago there was a meeting organized in one of the state agencies on this topic, anti-monopoly legislation, and I asked a question, so what are we going to do with VPNs? And then I was told that we could not and would never be able to intervene with the internet providers, internet companies. This was the reply I got 3 years ago. Then 3 years has passed, and we have a new law now stipulating the use of VPNs in the set legal framework. So what am I driving at? So does it matter what package of anti-monopoly legislation we speak about? The most important thing is technological progress. Technological progress is sword and shield, our sword and shield, and we have to catch up with the technological progress, whether we want it or not. There's one thing that disturbs me, so to say. We have the law on blocking unauthorized websites. We have a special law on VPNs, and we have the law on mirror websites. Then I don't understand why we still have these white spots in our legislation. And here I mean, of course, search engines. So if you allow me, I would like to add just 2 words on this issue. So all our search engines are not considered to be information mediator resources, and the very definition of search engines is very vague. They are not websites. So what status do they have? So this ambiguity of the existing legislation allows them to stay intact. They have stayed intact. So we do need a norm, a legal norm, describing their status, legal status. So Yandex, one of our search engines, from the point of view of our industry, creative industry and visual industry, Yandex is a piracy website number 1, and copyright IP right holders openly call them a piracy, a website. And if we look broadly on the experience, if we look at the experience of other countries, we see that similar search engines abroad in other countries, they are given a special status, the status of an information mediator. And in our legislation, we do not have such a definition. And that's why whatever Yandex does or similar search engine websites do, we cannot take them to court. So the only solution to this problem would be as we see it, would be to introduce amendments to the existing legislation or a new law presupposing legal responsibility of search websites, information websites, for violating IP or copyright laws. So such websites, if participants of the forum, if you go to Yandex and check their website, and you will see lots of movies or reference to pirate websites containing movies which have copyrights. So Yandex has turned from a pure search engine into a massive case of massive violations of copyrights, movies and music. Thank you.
So, Mr. Selyanov and Mr. Smirnov's words must be taken into serious consideration, because if we speak on the state behalf, of course we understand that the major task is to attract investments, to create new Russian content, and if we mean that, of course these white spots in legislation must become the points of concern for the Russian legislation. Now I would like to address the music industry, and I would like Mr. Blinov and Mr. Agronov say a few words about what you have heard about the initiatives. Mr. Blinov, the chairperson of the board of the musical industry, and thank you very much for giving me the floor. Several years ago, in 2003 or 2013, sorry, when we were in the musical business on selling 30 seconds musical clips of quite low quality, like ringtones, and that was very disappointing. We didn't see any prospects, we didn't see any future, how it could change, but then some things happened and they changed the musical market dramatically. So the social network VKontakte was legalized, and it certainly influenced the income of musical industry. Then streaming services also got got their winning positions, and they got they became very popular, and it meant that now music, in Russia, music is not going to be going to be consumed legally. So then I agree with all the speakers here that, of course, we cannot stop, we cannot enjoy the fruit of our labor now, and we have to move on. And now current agenda includes such an item as just blocking some mobile applications, because so that's the direct way of of piracy, of unauthorized use of musical content. And so then we can follow the steps, follow the suit of Google or Apple, how they protected their content. And so we are working in this direction, and I think that my colleague will give a few more words about that. And as for the solutions, and as for the results of our recent work, some authorities which deal with the musical industry recently in the Russian, the musical market has been growing very actively recently in Russia, and we are in the well, just we are among the three, mostly, most rapidly growing markets, together with some Chinese market and Korean market. So, and in this forthcoming 5 years, I think they will be the best 5 years for Russian musical industry and for global musical industry if we go on cooperating with the state. Thank you. And Mr. Agronov, the General Director of the National Federation of the Musical Industry. Now the floor is yours. Thank you. I would like to go on talking about the same field, and musical industry is I think it suffered the most in 2008 from the piracy, and it was in critical condition in 2008. The situation was really terrible, but fortunately at some point we were supported by the public authorities and some institutions in the State Duma and courts. Well, so today, our situation today is the consequence of this kind of cooperation, and that our problems have been solved very well. And of course, we have got a lot of problems and some challenges that we have to cope with. But basically, the major problem is the musical application for mobile phones and just this, music in the mobile phones. And so I think that we will take some amendments in the State Duma, which will facilitate some some content, some illegal content in the musical applications. But we also understand that just some kind of bans will boost the migration of illegal users, illegal consumers, and the piracy. So then we have to take into consideration on this all these consequent changes and all these links. And so just we have to think kind of, to take it as a system. Yeah, so, and at the same time, I would like to remind you about the amendments which were just enforced, and they are on collective use, and they have repaired the situation a little bit. And I think that the nearest future, foreseeable future, will not see any kind of scandals that we have witnessed, because we are raising the standards, the transparency standards. And so this new law, as we hope, just the Ministry of Culture has mentioned one of the recommendations of the government, which will focus on the problem for the musical industry and for the collective use management. And I'm speaking about the draft law recommendation on the on the compensation for the producer, on the compensations and on the charges for the producer. The compensation on the money spent on the production. And just this issue hasn't been settled yet, and the this concerns these collective management societies and the membership of legal entities in such societies, because just the membership of the legal entities is not allowed now in these societies on collective management, and that leads to some misunderstandings about the just the charges and the remuneration remunerations and the royalties which are paid on the musical production. Well, we actually do not see any kind of legal barriers to the or legal obstacles to the membership of the legal entities in the societies of the collective management. But the question is about the amending the statutes of such societies, of such such groups. But then, unfortunately, we cannot solve this question without the interference of the Ministry of Culture. We don't see the representative here, but, well, we send the letter to the Ministry of Culture, and I hope that we will get the reply very, very quickly. Thank you so much. And
thank you very much for raising this problem. It is very topical, really very topical. Well, in general, it all sounds now in the format that Carthage must be destroyed. IPQuorum, I'm always told that legal persons, legal entities should always be the members of this community. Nobody is against that, including those acting communities. There is only one point. In Rio, there are 27,000 members of this community, and I believe, Alexander can correct me, how many major music houses are members of this organization? So, even there are many, if there are many of them, the problem cannot be solved. So we should track or monitor the trends. And there is a very interesting tendency nowadays. The industry used to be fighting for collective management in struggling with some state authorities, but now it is for changing for the elements of individual management. I mean to say that we should not get into detail if these organizations are members of these organizations or not, but to more actively participate in the work of these organizations. And we have such an opportunity nowadays. Alexander is the member of Copyright Council, and together move forward. Thank you. This is very sensible position, and I believe we want and we will do everything together, solving different issues, even they are of technical character. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leonid. Colleagues, we have come logically to the third set of issues which we have on the agenda. You can see different factions of business are not solid in terms of relation to regulating, their attitude to regulating. Either this should be global licensing or intellectual property management through the blockchain technologies and many other questions. So here we have a question of the model of fixation of the right, the copyright. The universal models are hardly possible, but the technologies make it able to do IP a useful or convenient tool. So here I have a question to Andrey Kluchevsky, who was ideologist of all these concepts. The mechanisms which you propose, will they make it possible to efficiently manage intellectual rights or copyrights? Technologies are a very great assistance, of course. It has always been so, but we should remember that only technologies without motivation for using them are not the Saint Grail, and they cannot save anyone. Moreover, the fading of technologies quite often happens because there is no intention from the players on the market to use these technologies. That is why I believe that the topical character of blockchain is that it responds, this technology responds to the problem which really exists in the field of intellectual property. This is the crisis of trust. And the blockchain as a means of providing This is not hype, as we can see. These are tailor-made solution. We have services now which tried this chain of money to transfer to blockchain. The logic was quite controversial, but the more we understood technologies, we got deeper into that, and we realized that the blockchain is quite a good solution for infrastructure. I mean to say that to beyond the market frameworks, beyond the state frameworks, to fix the results of intellectual property movement, to mark or indicate all the factors of its activity, and to trust the information which is in this network of this infrastructural network. IP chain project is actually the infrastructural solution of this kind. And I'm pleased to see that the participants of the market are not getting involved into that, but they are involved with proposals, with modifications or amendments to this project. And it's very great that the project was initially very flexible in terms of data model. So we got to this model from the very beginning in not fixing on existing objects of intellectual property, but we try to foresee some objects. And actually this is working now. And from the point of view of our hub, the aspect of interaction between the state and the government is also very important. I like this principle that the state should be there where it is impossible to do without it. In all the other fields, the state should be a strict censor and a strict judge, on the other hand, in order to give the society way to development, to creation, and the best results of this creative work will appear as new creative things. Thank you very much, Andrey.
Chain.
Andrey Kluchevsky, president of the IP Chain Association. So, a few questions about blockchain. Let's continue this topic. How about international experience? Has blockchain become a part of the international system? And I'm referring this question to Pavel Katkov. He has a presentation on this topic, but I would like to ask you to be very brief because we're pressed for time. So 1 or 2 slides. So just tell us a few words about international experience. Slide number 9, please. And would be good to have my presentation on the screen. So now we have it. So I prepared a very long presentation, but since we're pressed for time, I will show you only 1 or 2 slides. So in fact, we've been monitoring what is happening in the world in this particular area. So I am skipping a couple of slides and I'm focusing on this on international experience. Japanese example, a case of Japan. The Agency of Financial Services from Japan is elaborating a unified system of identification system to be used when working with customers using blockchain. You know, Japan is a high-tech country, a very advanced country in many respects. It's a good example to follow, not only for Russia, but for other players of the blockchain market. Then another example, European crypto bank. It's a joint venture from London, Paris, and Milan, and this is an example of the use of this blockchain technology in the banking sector, and this is a very positive experience that helps to create a unified banking market in Europe. This bank is it will allow customers of this bank to do all the transactions much faster. There's another example. It's an from the agro sector, cotton production. And this is a very good illustration from the opposite, when IT media sphere was also a good area for the development of offline businesses. And here in this sector, in agro-industrial sector, we are introducing blockchain platforms for the supply of agricultural goods. And you see that we have to catch up with the industry both online and offline. So then what goes next? And this slide has lots of information on what has been done in Finland, for instance, in Estonia, in Brazil, and in other countries. Very interesting examples, and you can find the information on these examples on specialized websites. It was a very brief and very fast overview of what has been achieved in the blockchain business, so you can have access to my presentation. I am planning to upload it to the website of the conference, our IPQuorum. I'm sure they can do that, the organizers can do that, because international experience in such a specific sphere is of great interest. So just to conclude, I would like to say that the agenda of the forum is very appealing to a wide variety of stakeholders. And media business is not the only business that uses intellectual property. Music is important, but of course trademarks are even more important. Marketing, manufacturing, and I'm sure that blockchain platform could be used in a wide variety of spheres of the national economy. And intermediate agency will provide you with more information on the potential of IP chain here in Russia, and I'm sure that IP chain has enough potential to be an integral part of all the sectors of the national economy. So do you have a question to Pavel? Unfortunately, the speaker doesn't speak to the microphone, so interpreters cannot hear the question or the comment. We have 18 speakers on our agenda. I would have wanted to listen to all of the presentation, to be able to ask questions to the presenters, to the speakers of the panel discussion, because we were saying that the state should not interfere with what we're doing. The state should be where it is needed. It should not exert pressure on whatever stakeholders we are speaking about. Of course, when we speak about anti-piracy legislation, then the state is needed. But when we are speaking about the international experience in IP chain, the principles that the presenter pointed out in his very brief, unfortunately very brief presentation, I was actually looking forward to learning more about them. Is it possible to introduce blockchain technologies into the national sectors without the help of the state? Is it possible to do that? I doubt it. I think that we have to refer to state support and state assistance. because whatever we do, whatever deals we conclude, it should be done within the legal environment, legal framework of the country. So whom are you asking this question? Are you asking the speaker or the moderator? But I'm just saying that unfortunately, so far we have not had an opportunity to discuss the questions of the agenda. Thank you for your comments, for your idea.
We have got 18 speakers, and I'm really happy to hear your comment, but I would like you to answer the question. So, but I need some of my slides to be a little bit more detailed in my answering. My personal opinion is that blockchain idea can be implemented in various areas, and of course together with this support, or supported by, whether it is supported by the authorities or not. Yeah, and just if you don't trust the platform, well, just of course probably the platform is not very good. So if the platform is trusted, for example, it's some kind of civil institution, or it's some kind of just the non-governmental institution, it doesn't need any governmental support, any public support to be trusted. Yeah. So, and of course the right holders can rely on that. So that would be the answer to your question. So the answer is the trust. Yeah. So if it is trusted, then it will work. If it is not trusted, then it doesn't work. So unfortunately, the speaker again is not speaking into the microphone. So that's why it's difficult to interpret. If blockchain, as you showed in your presentation, if the blockchain interferes into banking sphere, and like in some countries, then we have to amend the banking legislation. Otherwise, they cannot work, they cannot function. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So it must be it must be amended. Then yes, you are right. In some spheres, yes. The banking sphere cannot be easily interfered with the blockchain. So into blockchain is not so easy to go to the banking sphere. Then you will have to change a lot. Legislation and so on. So I cannot keep quiet. Why isn't it possible to introduce into the finance financial space, finance sphere? Well, I can. Legislation has already been accepted, and now the banking sphere is creating the system of remote identification for the customer. Well, and the question is if it is going to be the every bank which has got this identification, remote identification, or it's about some separate banks, some certain banks which can have this kind of monitoring system, or whether it can be applied both to banking and some other spheres. So let's wait until the central bank has completed its project, and then we will see how it's going to develop. So was there any meeting and was there any conference at the central bank last week? Yes, there was, and they discussed some practical steps towards the just some new introductions, and that they also mentioned the blockchain, but blockchain is not everything, and it cannot be introduced everywhere. Yeah, so then I'm not an expert in banking sphere, but yeah, probably that's all. Yeah, so we have got very little time left, and so Ross Congress. So They, for example, have got the limit, like 8 speakers, and you have got half an hour and a half to talk. But we have got 18 speakers, and then we have to sign the international agreement, which is very important. So I remind you that we are now in a fantastic city, fabulous city of Svetlogorsk, former Russian, and so we have got some new kind of these experimental playgrounds, which are kind of business incubators, and I would like the representatives of local business circles to share their experience about this new platform and to show how nicely they can be incorporated in this these new blockchain technologies. So Mr. Shenderuk-Zhidkov, the vice chairperson of the government of the Kaliningrad region.
I would like to get to the economical aspects and regional aspects. You know, I'm vice premier who's responsible for investment and traction to the region, but on the other hand, I'm a creative manager. I'm chair of the board of the football club Baltica. When will we be in the Prime League? So, if we win over Karelia Sovetov today, then we will be fine. So, and we'll open the new stadium. So, why am I saying this? I believe that for the original creative industries, there are some challenges today, and I would like to focus on these challenges. The first one is not obvious, but it's very important. This is the word itself, industry. We are not taking something such things as industries as creative, and it also influences big or affects big businesses and companies. We are used to the fact that something creative should be supported because it has some ideological role or something else. What does it lead to? A strong business, besides what it has, starts getting state support or quasi-state support from state corporations. But weak businesses which have good, creative, competitive products cannot obtain this financial support from the such financial support from the state. As a result, we empower the strong one, but weaken the weak ones. We make stakes on Moscow and take businesses from the region. Why am I saying that? I'm not talking about the movies or football teams or whatever, for example, this football team Baltica. Why do we think that the state corporations should finance or spend large budgets for our major football clubs, which are our national heritage, but smaller football clubs which exist on regional budgets, so they do not get this kind of attention. So this is not a fair competition, and in general this is discrimination of the market and discrimination of regions as a result. And I believe that this problem might be solved if there would be strict separation on the side of the state. The state should support, but should financially support something which is creative and author movies or something like that, but which is a creative business. The state should withdraw from those areas and leave it for commercial structures. The second challenge which is before us, this is the technological one. We've been talking a lot about blockchain platforms, about regulation, but you know, one of the companies which works or active in the Kaliningrad region, Kino Dance, they will speak about themselves. Besides making world level computer graphics of a world level, and in spite of the fact that we cannot financially support them here in Kaliningrad as they would have had it in Moscow. So, making this very qualitative product, they made a blockchain which combines different rights, copyrights of actors, producers, etc. But as for today, our legislation cannot enable them to implement this project to full extent. And now we have competitiveness, not competition, not only between regions, but between jurisdictions. I believe that the solution to this problem, and the governor mentioned that, might be establishing of these regulative playgrounds, so to say, when in some regions the best practices, creative practices, in creative companies could be implemented in certain regions, but not them to go to the United States or to some perfect regions to get financial support for creative solutions. We lose ideas, we lose people, and the GDP as a result. And the third issue is the challenge of, so to say, economical position of regions. If you look at the Kaliningrad region, for example, the weather is nice, the position is very good, but economically, because of the separation from mainland Russia, it is very difficult for business to develop here. We have we have a lot of problems here because of this character of our region. You can travel into the Kaliningrad region, you can have only 35 kilos of cargo with you, for example, if you go by train or by plane. So, and it leads to the fact that our ordinary business in a very difficult conditions, and actually I bow to them that they are working in such difficult conditions. But our creative businesses, the companies of digital economy, they do not have this kind of problems. And we, as government, make a stake on them. We have managed to obtain certain privileges for them. They do not have they do not pay property tax, income tax, etc. So, but in my opinion, there is a problem in Russia. It's in inequality of regions. The Kaliningrad region is not the only one. The Crimea is the same, etc., and many others. So, the regional interests should be taken into account in terms of development of industries. Alexander, very briefly, do you believe that the Kaliningrad region, being very special region of our country, where regulating businesses and territories are their competitive advantages? Without any doubt. But for this day, we need a certain playground, so to say. We have such playgrounds or such solutions in Moscow, in Skolkovo, when they want to have a kind of experiment. So they make it in Moscow or in some other areas. But I believe that different regions should be used for that, for Kaliningrad region, for example, or even Chechnya. So it would enable the regions to make additional regional gross product, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Mr. Melentiev, president of the Kinodance company. So after such an interesting contribution from vice governor of the Kaliningrad region to answer the question. So I'm just asking wondering if I have some time for a short video clip. So first of all, if you want to ask me about the blockchain technology, on the 7th of April there will be a special forum on blockchain in Moscow, so I'm going to skip this topic, and I would like to focus on another topic, high-tech cluster. So where's the remote control? No, video, not the slides of my presentation. So just a second, it takes some time. So maybe I should start. So if we speak about creative industries, then modern movie business is a high-tech creative industry. In all other countries, the state sets tasks for movie businesses and supports movie businesses. So if we look at the US, China, and a number of European countries, the situation, it's a cooperation of the state and private business. So the Kaliningrad region is a special economic zone, having or offering good conditions for the production of a movie product. My company, Kinodance, is a full cycle, a complete cycle company, and we manufacture products for the domestic market and international markets. This is we work together with Ambi Media Group, one of the biggest independent movie companies in the world. At the moment, Kinodance company is expanding, and here in Kaliningrad, we are planning to establish a high-tech cluster for the production of high-quality computer graphics for movies. It will be done in the form of private-public partnership. Our main area is the production of visual effects and computer graphics. And again, I'm repeating myself, we are oriented at other international markets. We specialize in the production of movies, post-production. We design software for movies, and we understand that our company has good economic potential. We create new jobs. We employ young specialists, university graduates. We are launching new education programs in higher educational institutions of Kaliningrad, and we employ graduates. And of course, we are one of the major taxpayers, will be one of the major taxpayers of the Kaliningrad region, and we strengthen the export potential of Kaliningrad. And we benefit from the support of the government of the Kaliningrad region in our ambitious plans to set up a creative cluster here. And we are ambitious enough to become important, one of the main players on the international market of visual effects. So I would be very happy if we manage to demonstrate a very short video. Unfortunately not. So we still understand where to go, and you have set your aims, and wish you all the success.
So now I would like to give the floor to our speaker from Germany, Martin Maria Kruger, from Germany, from the Musical Fund, the representative of Musical Fund, Mr. Kruger. Okay, the floor is yours. And then we will sign the document, and our agreement will be signed together with Mr. Kruger and Andrey Krichevsky.
Dear colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, to be here in the name of the German Music Council, and I apologize for not speaking Russian. And as I see that nearly all of you have no phones like me for Russian in your ear, I'm afraid that most of you will not understand me. I'll speak in very short, because maybe you can just translate only this, that I apologize this, and that they, or if not.
Please be sure that most of the public understands.
Okay.
Yes.
I was asked to speak about 3 questions, and I'll do it now in very, very short time. Who are the German Music Council and other umbrella organizations of the civil society in Germany? How do state, economy, and civil society interact? And which are the concrete demands of the civil umbrella organizations concerning the future internet law in the light of the forthcoming EU directive on copyright in the digital single market? First, as to the civil society. The German Music Council has grown in 65 years to the umbrella organization, or I prefer to say network, of nearly all institutions and organizations of national importance in German music life. This includes the sectors of artistry, education and research, the national radio stations, the amateur choirs and orchestras, the collecting societies like GEMA and GVL, the official institutions in the foreign field like Goethe Institute and Institute for Foreign Relations and so on, and also the branch of music economy. In total, 5 million people are organized in this music council, and about 14 million people are politically represented by it. The legal form is the one of a registered non-profit organization under the patronage of our federal president, Frank-Walter Steinmeier. About 75% of the budget is provided by the German federal government, the rest by membership fees. Besides the political work, the German Music Council is responsible for about 15 national projects fostering music life, from competitions to the German Music Information Center up to projects for contemporary music and the national youth orchestras. With regard to our subject here in Svetlogorsk, let me mention 2 additional organizations being highly involved in this political process of intellectual property: the German Culture Council and the Initiative Authors' Rights, Initiative Urheberrecht. The German Culture Council has 8 formal members representing the 8 basic sections of cultural life. The German Music Council forms the music section. The German Culture Council is responsible for coordinating the civil position and lobbying concerning the subjects that are relevant for several of these sections. Like the German Music Council, it's mainly supported by the German federal government. The Initiative Authors' Rights is a merger of 35 associations and unions that in total represent about 140,000 authors and performing artists. It concentrates as a classical lobbyist on influencing the legislation as far as authors or performing artists' rights are concerned, of course without public money. How do these 3 sectors, state government, economy and civil society, interact? Dependent on which country you are coming from, you might be astonished to hear that the federal government of Germany intensively supports civil associations that aim at political advertising, including even public criticizing of those who give them the money. As a matter of fact, the basic philosophy is the one of a partnership between the statal power, parliament and government, and the civil society, according to the sentence in our constitution, any statal power is subjected to the people. Of course, there are situations where this must be readjusted, but in the whole it works. Finally, the civil organizations are even expected by the politicians to produce public pressure for creating the legitimation to react on a demand. The economy is a power by its own, as the welfare of the state as well as of the society depends on a healthy economy. Let's regard the interaction of state, economy and civil society concerning the procedure of legislation in the field of internet copyright. A very important fact is that everybody has to face and to accept that the authors of any kind, and as they are also creating a unique artistic product, the performing artists, are the indispensable base of any creative industry. Within the membership of the German Music Council as well as of the Cultural Council, there are authors' organizations, including collective management organizations, as well as exploiters' organizations of different kinds. Yet, until now, there was always a basic agreement of the 2 sides that the value of intellectual property has to be respected and remunerated. This matches as well the tradition of German legislation as the official position of the German government in the topical procedure at European level. All of you, dear colleagues, know that talking about the future of copyright legislation means in these months in Europe speaking about the European Union directive Copyright in the Digital Single Market that in very short time, certainly in this year, will be decided on by the European Parliament and the European Council, as next year there will be elections. The German Cultural Council and the initiative Authors' Rights have reacted in several steps, turning as well to the European Union as to the national German authorities. You can easily find the recommendations in German language on the homepages of the two organizations. It seems that the German government, the collective management organizations as representatives and lawyers of the authors and performing artists, and the civil umbrella organizations are aiming the same, mainly the correction of the so-called value gap in the context of internet platforms and a fair balance between public access to information and artistic, musical, audiovisual products on the one hand, a reasonable remuneration for the authors and artists on the other. The main demands formulated by the organizations mentioned above towards the national German and European authorities are the following. The value gap. According to the position of German right holders organizations, the German government now pronounces that internet platforms are not only responsible to eliminate illegal content, but as well to share the income generated with the right holders. Irrespective of the European Union e-commerce directive, which limits the liability for hosting platforms, platforms like YouTube, which make profit not by hosting, but by selling advertisements, have to pay for the content uploaded by users. Authors' contract law. Many authors and performers transfer or assign their exclusive rights, such as the right of making available on demand, to the producer or publisher. This is up to now more or less unrestricted by European law. The bargaining power of the usually weak author or performer sets the condition for the payment by the producer or publisher. The proposed directive, European directive, wants to improve this by transparency rules. Producers and publishers have to inform the author or performer about the income generated by the creators. If the agreed payment is out of proportion, there is an individual right to readjust the payment and to be paid extra. This is an important signal, but does it work? Our demand is additional remuneration right for on-demand users. Already by now, European law allows authors to change bad contracts and demand participation of benefits from the producers who are their direct contract partners. Yet, authors insisting on their right are blacklisted and no more engaged, as it happened to the dubbing speaker of Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. And the big money is generated by the platforms, not by the producers. Therefore, two conditions must be fulfilled. First, the right of remuneration must be unwaivable by the authors. Second, the remuneration, meaning participation in the revenues generated in the primary market, must be transferred directly by the platforms through collective management societies. The new law has to transfer the existing European Union directive from 1992, rental and lending, to the new age of internet and video on demand. Participation of publishers. There must be a solution for the proven reinstallation of the participation of publishers, because they are important also for the authors, and when they help them licensing, then they have also to participate in the revenues. And then another subject, exceptions or limitations to the rights of the authors and other right holders, especially in the field of science and education. There must be found a fair balance between the demands of the public, of students, of professors, of pupils, to have free access to every kind of information, but there must also be a remuneration for those who create these sources, because otherwise no one will go on creating these sources. And the last, just a word, framing, that I didn't hear until now today. I think the requirements of making available protected works to the public under the aspect of the so-called framing have to be clearly defined. At this moment, the right holders are more or less without rights. There must be a clarification of the difference between integrating a protected content in a new context which has not been approved by the author and links in a just referential manner. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, there are more demands referring to works out of print, to works and sources for disabled persons, and to making use of clouds. Important subject. But let me close this keynote by quoting the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. He described the authors and artists to be the crown jewels of society. We should insist on giving them the legal frame that allows them to shine. Thank you for your attention. Спасибо.
Danke schön, Herr Krüger. It was a pleasure to hear you citing the Constitution.
So you can see our guests from abroad confirm the international status of our IPQuorum, and he finalized our topic because he referred to the Constitution as well. The Constitution should be a guiding light for us all. 2 minutes before signing the document, I would ask the Director General of Mr. Yevgeny Safronov to say about the results of research or a survey of Russian industries. These are very important figures. I just like you to pay your attention to them. Just 2 minutes. I will not speak long. I would like to say to Mr. Gronov concerning the first successful pirate attack was in 2000 and in 1902 in the Russian Empire, so to say. This is just a joke. We've been working on developing the law on culture to go with the Chamber of Trade and Commerce and Ministry of Culture. We had been working half a year before the president said about that. This is not very much. We understood that we would not do that about the law on culture unless we find boundaries about what culture is and give the strict definition to this word, because nowadays we do not have the definition for culture. We call these industries creative, entertaining, whatever. So we do not use the word creative nowadays. We do not use the word entertaining, and now we are talking about cultural industries, and the main component of this are creative industries. Now let us leave leisure a bit aside, which is not connected with the usage of results of intellectual activity. We try to make it something describable. You can have this block scheme on our website on Monday, so I will not go into detail. This is a very complicated scheme, as well as culture is. So we calculated the money which which is made in culture. We consider creative industries those which the main factor of demand is the access to the results of creative and intellectual activities. So having calculated, we got the very serious figure, 1,800,000,000,000 rubles a year in 2018. You can find this information on our website, so you can imagine how much of this money was received by the creators of this intellectual property. They received much more less. My colleagues know this. So all these can be described in detail, but I will not take your time. I believe just this figure is enough. Thank you very much. Thank you. So We have been working for 1 hour and 40 minutes. Now, let's devote 5 minutes to signing of the agreement on cooperation between Russian Musical Union, Andrey Khrushchevsky, Vsevolod Zadiratsky, and German Musical Union, Mr. Martin Maria Kruger. Please come here. So we are waiting for our assistance with the documents. Esteemed colleagues, now we are signing an agreement between a very long-term partners, the Union of Composers of Russia and the German Musical Council. The German Musical Council is a very big organization, and now, after establishing of such a union in Russia, we may say that the Russian Musical Council is of the same kind as German one. The German Musical Council covers different kind of music, different kind of people connected with music. School education, secondary school education, the issues of professional education and composer creativity. Our contact with the German Musical Council has achieved its climax in 1982-1999. So to the last year of the existence of the Soviet Union, and those last years when we accumulated this critical mass of likeness or between Russia and Germany, that was the critical mass for one of the prerequisites of the Berlin Wall fall. And that was one of the prerequisites of global changes in Europe. Those days, we, together with Deutsches Musikrat, we made a very amazing, fascinating festivals in Germany, then in the Soviet Union in the last year of its existence, and it covered vast territories and dozens of cities. So the German Musical Council is our very good and very dynamically penetrates our life and also lets us get into their cultural life. This is a very good thing which we are doing now. My congratulations on signing this document. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the speakers, all the participants of the panel. I hope that organizers will post these materials on the website. So we do not have any more speakers. Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you very much for your patience, for questions from the auditorium.